I've been a game master for about 10 years now, and the first 6 years were rough. I had never finished a single campaign, most of them fizzled out around like session 5 to 8, and my players were railroaded like you wouldn't believe. But then I was taught something that changed me as a GM forever. Fast forward to a year ago, I ran my first actual play campaign, Dark Underworld, here on my channel, and I didn't have any of the burnout that I used to get. On top of that, 80% of the campaign's story and a vast majority of our episodes were player decision led. A lot of viewers really liked the campaign, and I've gotten a lot of questions asking me for GM advice since then. And the first thing I share is the thing that was taught to me, and it's what we're going to go over in this video way more in depth. And really, it comes down to just one little simple change to how you view the role of the GM at the table. And that is, the GM is a player too. It sounds simple, but it fundamentally changes the role of the game master and how they're viewed at the table. Welcome to the Tabletop Empire. My name is Nate, and today we're going to be talking about what I believe is the better way to GM. Saying the GM is a player too sounds really obvious, right? But you would be surprised at how often players playing characters will treat their GM as anything but. So give me just a minute to paint a not so pretty picture, and let me know if you've experienced this before as a GM. It's Friday night, and your group is planning on meeting tomorrow for a new session. And you as the GM are going to spend your evening prepping, writing, cooking the greatest plotline to ever exist, all for your players. And it did take the whole evening, but it was worth it. This is going to be fire. Your players are going to love it. So the next day, you clean off your table, you get your books and your screen and your dice ready to play and all set up. And 30 minutes before you start to play, you get a text in your group chat from one of your players. They're backing out of the session today. They don't give you a reason why. Oh, and then right after that, another player responds with, "Oh, was that today? I'm sorry, something came up, I'm not going to be able to make it either." And at that point, it doesn't really matter if the other two players respond at all, because are you really going to play this awesome session with only half of your party? Probably not. It just sucks that you spent your whole Friday night planning for a session while your friends were playing video games or hanging out or doing whatever. But you know what? Maybe it is your fault. Maybe you could have texted them earlier in the week or the night before or earlier that morning. Maybe you should have tried a little harder to make sure everybody remembered. So you fix your mistake. You get everybody to your table next Saturday, making sure that nobody was able to forget this time. You finally get to start this adventure, and the players derailed it, rendering hours of planning pretty much useless. And the cycle continues until you eventually reach a breaking point. You burn out, because the amount of effort that you're putting into it just isn't worth it anymore. And the campaign fizzles out before it even begins. This is what it looks like when all of the responsibility is on the game master. And what's even worse is I have played with players who are adamant that it is the GM's responsibility to do everything. Even recently, a friend of mine was GMing a game for me and two of our other friends. And it was a normal day. I reached out just earlier in the afternoon being like, "Hey, are we still good for tonight?" And one of the other players had the mother gonking audacity to quit the table and blow up the whole campaign because, and I quote, "the GM should be the one checking in, not the players." I wish I was exaggerating. And then the other player left because they were friends with the problem player, leaving just me and the GM and a dead campaign. Yes, I am still a little bit salty. I was very much invested in the story, and I really still want to know what happens, but now I'll never know. I'll move on eventually, but let's move on with the video. The point is, this mindset that the GM is somehow separate from the players creates this weird expectation that the GM is responsible for everything. So how does treating the GM as a player change this drastically? Well, because then the responsibility belongs to everyone. Yes, the responsibility of making sure everybody remembers to actually get together and play, but it is so much more than that. And the first thing that responsibility applies to is the story. You thought this was your novel or movie that you were leading the players through. I hate to be the one to break it to you. Actually, no, I'm perfectly fine being the one to break it to you. It's everybody at the story's table. No. It's everybody at the table story. It belongs to everyone at the table, including you, the GM. It's a collaborated adventure. It might be hard to let go of this mentality of leading the players through your story, maybe because you like the control, or maybe more likely, the idea of letting go of that control terrifies you because it leads you to feeling overwhelmed and stressed. Like, how can I possibly be prepared for whatever the players are going to maybe do if I don't plan for it? I know because that used to be me. And trust me when I say that the best moments of the story are typically the ones that weren't planned out beforehand. If you trust your players and give them the space to make decisions to affect the story and change the story and input into the story, you're going to find more moments of laughter, amazing dialogue, gripping story, and best of all, you're going to hit that moment of realizing that your players aren't just present, but they're actively engaged in what's going on. When their decisions and their choices matter, they're going to be more invested in the story. And a big part of what helps that to happen is making sure that every player has a goal, something that they are working towards, something that drives their character forwards. And if they don't know, you as the GM can step in and help them. But the player has to meet you halfway. You can create opportunities and give ideas, but ultimately you cannot care about the player's character more than the player does. But again, every player should have something that motivates their character forward, something that gives them an active reason to want to participate in the story, to actively drive the story forward instead of just riding along in the GM's story. They aren't just characters in your story, they are also storytellers at the table. When you do this, you will no longer have to spend hours prepping every session and the whole campaign from start to finish. You can now just create some encounters and events and some ideas for where the story could go. Create some breadcrumbs for the players and then just follow their lead. And yeah, you're gonna have to work on your improv skills, but we were all bad at it first. I was terrible at it at first. But the more you do it and the more you practice it, the better you get. And most of the time, if you still want a big story moment, and it would be a major plot point in the campaign story, you still have the ability to do that. It can just now be woven into the story that everybody's created together. Because remember, it is the player's story, but you, the GM, are a player, so it's just your part of the story that you're contributing. Which, this leads me into our next responsibility, the responsibility of prep time. The GM should not be spending hours prepping every session. If the GM is a player too, then the GM's out-of-session prep work should be comparable to the other players. The other players might spend some time looking at their XP, buying new talents, figuring out what skills they want to do, looking over their motivations and their goals and what they kind of want to do moving forward, and just getting their characters prepped for the next session. And the GM should be doing something similar, spending a little time prepping for maybe what might come up in the next session. If that sounds intimidating, let me give you some pointers. Earlier, I mentioned coming up with ideas for where the story could go. When you are prepping your session, take those ideas and turn them into bullet points. Personally, I generally begin my notes with just the opening narration to set the scene, and then 2 to 4 bullet points for where the story could go. That number will roughly change depending on the length of the session, and it might be a different number for you based on personal preference. These bullet points can be key story beats, events, encounters, paths that the players might take, forks in the story, an interesting NPC or side quest. It really is up to you and how you want to do it. But the important thing is that these are not a script. These are not things that will happen, these are things that could happen. This method is super flexible, and it's really more of just a fallback if you don't have any ideas in the moment or if the players stall and get stuck. This method also just gives the space for your players to go in any direction. Do they want to follow your breadcrumbs? Do they want to pursue their goals? Do they want to go down some random side street that you had nothing planned for at the start of the session? You can now just let them and paint the scene as they go down each new street. So for example, for one of these bullet points, maybe you planned for 3 bounty hunters to show up and they mistake one of the party members as one of their targets. That doesn't have to happen at one particular location. That can happen anywhere. Or maybe you planned for this plot hook moment where this stranger stumbles across the party and after a successful perception check, they notice a lightsaber hidden underneath his robe. That doesn't need to happen because the players went down the specific street that you planned for them to. That can happen literally anywhere the players choose to go. And sometimes you may finish a session and not use any of the bullet points that you had planned. That's okay, now you have material for later. The goal isn't to predict everything that your players are going to do. The goal is to prepare enough that you can confidently react when they do something unexpected. This doesn't mean you can't have planned stories, planned villains, arcs, or big moments. Those things are great. The difference is now that you're creating the story with the players and not dragging them through it. And hopefully after this, we're no longer spending 8 hours planning a session that the players are probably going to ignore. Just spend a little time creating a foundation, then sit down and play the game with your players. Okay, so we have a shared responsibility for everyone for the story, a equal responsibility for every player for the amount of prep time. But how about sharing the responsibility of knowing the game's rules? The GM should not be the only one at the table who knows the rules. If the GM is a player too, that means the other players have some level of responsibility of understanding the game that they're playing. By your 4th session in the campaign, players should still not be asking you basic questions about the core fundamentals of the game every time they play. It's not the GM's responsibility or job to carry all of the game knowledge. Now, sure, an argument can be made that the GMs should generally know the rules the best. After all, a lot of the final decisions on the rules making or how situations are handled generally falls on the GM. And I don't have a problem with that. The GM should have a generally good understanding of what they're playing. But that's a little bit different than being the only person at the table who knows anything about the rules of the game. And GMs, while it is true that you should have a generally good understanding of the game that you're about to run, you don't need to know everything up front. You don't have to be a rules encyclopedia for every single mechanic and sentence in the core rulebook, because eventually things are going to come up that you just don't know or don't remember. But when that happens, you can follow just 3 simple steps. Decide, continue, review. If everyone at the table is confused and none of the other players know the rule that you're stuck on, give it just a few minutes, look for the rule. If you can't find it quickly, just continue on with the game. Use your GM powers, just decide how it's going to be for this session, move on, keep playing, keep the momentum going. And then after the session, you can go back to the core rulebook, find that ruling, and then implement it going forwards. And if you made the wrong call, and if one of the players got the short end of the stick, then you can make it up to them, or maybe you don't. The important thing to realize, though, is that mistakes are going to happen. Every GM makes mistakes. I have made mistakes. You will make a ruling that turns out to be wrong, and that's okay. Don't let the fear of not knowing every rule keep you from being excited about playing or enjoying your game. But this is a reason why the players should know some of the rules too. Because let's say one of the players watched a video on space combat and the GM can't remember one specific ruling for space combat. Maybe that player remembers the ruling that the GM doesn't, thus saving you a bunch of time not having to go into the rulebook. And if you times that by how many players are at the table, then hopefully the amount of rules lookups are drastically reduced. When the whole table has a good understanding of the game and the system, everyone can help keep the game moving. And if you are playing Star Wars RPG, I actually have a Beginner's Guide series playlist to walk any new players or GMs through all the rules as quickly and as easily as possible. So let's hit on our last point. Everybody has the responsibility of scheduling and checking in. It's not the GM's job to carry the weight and responsibility of making sure that the game happens on their back. It's not the GM's sole responsibility to reach out and make sure that everyone remembers that there's a session today. And really it boils down to the GM should not be the only person who cares. Every person at the table should be involved in figuring out when the next session is going to be. Everyone in the group chat should be willing to say, hey, are we still on for tonight? Because everyone is busy, including the GM. Everybody has jobs, families, responsibilities, and a good number of other things going on. But when you commit to playing in a campaign, you are making the game a priority because it affects more than just you. It should not become the fallback plan of if nothing else happens tonight. Put it on your phone calendar, set a reminder, treat it like any other commitment that you made. Everyone at the table chose to be part of the campaign, so everybody at the table shares the responsibility of keeping it going. So to tie this all together, a lot of GMs forget that they're supposed to enjoy the game. When the GM shares responsibility with the rest of the table, not only does it just prevent GM burnout, you also get to be surprised and experience the story just like everybody at the table with you. And I think this is a part that gets lost sometimes. We talk about the GM as the person who creates the world, runs the enemies, controls the NPCs, and guides the story. But sometimes we forget that the GM is there because they want to play too. You're not there to perform a service for everyone else. You are not there to be the entertainment coordinator, the scheduler, the rules encyclopedia, and the person responsible for every other person's fun. You are there to tell a story together. The best campaign that I ever ran was not the one where I had every detail planned out. It was the one where my players surprised me, where someone made a choice that I never expected, where a random moment became one of the most memorable scenes of the whole campaign, and where the story became something greater than what I could have created on my own. Because it's not one person telling a story to a group around a table. It's a group of players around a table telling a story together. If you enjoyed this video, blast like, and if you want to see more Star Wars RPG content, consider subscribing. And if you have any questions, or if you just want to leave your thoughts, I would love to hear your perspective. Put those down in the comments below. As of when this is uploaded, our second actual play campaign, The Unnaturals, is right around the corner. If you wish to check out The Unnaturals or our first campaign, Dark Underworld, I'll have links down in the description below. Go check those out. A huge thanks to Patreon. This channel would not be what it is without you and your support, so thank you so much. It means a lot. Thank you to everybody for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one, but until then, and as always, may the Force be with you.